All right, so I got myself some tea to talk about tea. I hope it's recording. So I've done a lot of reflecting over the past year, and I really came down to one conclusion, and that conclusion is I'm a clown. That's it. That's the video. No, on the real though, I was really looking back at my journal and really seeing how I improved over the past year. And I took a look and saw that I have some self-sabotaging tendencies. And there were like ways that I was able to overcome these tendencies, and I thought I would just share it with you so you can take some advice going into the next year and not being a clown like I was last year. Let me first start off by saying that you are not important. And I mean it in the nicest way possible. What I mean is that everyone is worried about themselves to even start worrying about you. In high school, I was really shy. I wouldn't play any sports until like my senior year because I had like this fear of really like putting myself on display when you're doing a sport, when you're running, stuff like that. And I realized that like no one really worries about how you perform, how you look. They're more worried about like how they look and how they're performing. I'm still working on this like fear of people thinking about me. I frequently go to the gym and I would like look around and be like, oh, like yeah, so and so is looking at me. I have to like do my curl a certain way, but in reality they're just like minding their own business, and you should too. Why are the thoughts of other people living in your head rent free? I mean, come on. Kind of related to that, but I also think it's important to remember that you're not perfect. And I think there's a lot of pressure nowadays to really perform, like really make sure that you are successful, making sure you attain all these things. But in reality, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a certain type of lifestyle to be happy. And I think there's pressure from social media because everyone on social media is always displaying this like perfect image of their life, their perfect relationship, job, whatnot. But what they're not really showing you is, they have slices of like imperfection. Some days where they just want to lay on the couch, eat some ice cream, be lazy. So it's kind of unfair for you to compare yourself to these like perfect snippets of other people's lives. You get what I'm saying? Seeing someone live a life that you don't have could be triggering. It could trigger these feelings of jealousy. Usually with jealousy, it signals to us that that other person has something that we don't, and we're kind of like putting them down to make ourselves feel better, to make up for that lack that we don't have. And judging the other person doesn't really give them anything, and it doesn't give us anything. Is used to make us feel better about the lack. So going forward, whenever you catch yourself judging someone, what you could do is like in your mind say like 3 nice things about them. Like you catch yourself like, oh, this person is wearing that, it's kind of weird looking, and then like in your mind say like, oh, they must be like really expressive of themselves. They're not afraid of like how others perceive how they look. Some nice stuff like that, so we're able to shift our mindset. Now let's talk about processing emotions. I think emotions are really powerful, and it allows us to quickly react to situations. I think, some emotions get a bad reps. For example, if you're sad one day, it could prompt you that, some things in your life need to change. And I think over the last year, I had feelings of sadness, and then I suppressed it, and it always came back. And it wasn't until I really sat with the feelings oh, I need to change this part of my life. I need to do this certain thing. And even emotions like anger, anger could mean that your boundaries are being overstepped. So you need to reevaluate them and communicate it to whoever cross your boundary. I think it's also important to note that you're not your emotion. Emotions come and go, and it's always in a transient state. So you're simply just experiencing emotion. You're not forever going to be angry. You're forever going to be annoyed. So for example, if you were saving something like a meal for yourself in the fridge and someone takes it, you would feel annoyed, and it's okay for you to feel annoyed. But it doesn't mean that you are annoyed and forever going to be annoyed. You're just temporarily experiencing these feelings, and you gotta sit with it and allow yourself to process it. So some ways you can do this is you can journal, you can meditate, and if the situation is something you need to react to it quickly, just simply try to slow down, take a couple breaths. If you don't have time to sit with the emotion, you can take a few breaths and go revisit it later. Another thing I'm actively working on is not downplaying myself. So I think it's a tendency for us to be our own worst critic. We tend to downplay our accomplishments, our achievements, because it kind of feels awkward. It kind of feels awkward someone praising you if you're not used to being praised, but by downplaying it, we're rejecting our accomplishments. So some ways that I was able to kind of help myself with this is when someone compliments me, I just say thank you. That's it. Just thank you. You can also say thank you. I really appreciate your comment. Be honest about it. Don't always try to oh, it's nothing. What I did was nothing. Don't worry about it. When you actually put a lot of effort into it, don't always say oh, thank you. You too. Really learn to take the compliment, and even though it feels awkward, you'll get used to it, and you'll get better at taking credit for yourself. The last thing I want to talk about is cognitive distortions. And cognitive distortions are weird ways we warp what truly is. One example of that is all or nothing thinking. And all of nothing thinking involves thinking of situations as black and white. So for example, if I fail this test, I'm a failure. Even though you may have done well on your previous test, you have a very serious statement and serious accusation for yourself, when it's really not black and white. Everything is a spectrum. And for these types of things, you kind of just have to catch yourself saying these things. So maybe you would journal and you would realize, oh, I'm having this definite statement of myself. And for example, instead of, if I don't get this job, I'm a failure, you can use yes and statements or although. So for example, although I did poorly with this job interview, I still have the skills to succeed and do even better on my next interview. So that way it's an open-ended discussion with yourself, and you're not just calling yourself names. Stop being mean to yourself. The last cognitive distortion I want to talk about is mind reading. So mind reading is when you're just trying to like predict or trying to assume what a person is feeling or saying. And it's not fun. It's not fun. I typically do this when I'm like reading like a friend's text message. I have a friend that only uses lowercase, and when I first started texting them, I was like overthinking things, and I was trying to mind read. I'm like, oh, they're using all lowercase. They must be like feeling so and so about me, when in reality that's just how they text. And sometimes we overanalyze things. We try to predict what the other person is saying, how they're feeling, when a conversation with other person would help resolve that. So if you're not able to confront the person, oh, got kind of windy. So if you're not able to confront the person, you would have to ask yourself a couple statements. So for example, if I was thinking, so and so is mad at me, you would reflect, is this statement true? Can I completely know 100% that it's true? How am I feeling about this situation? And lastly, what is the type of person I can be without these feelings? So yeah, really use these prompts to kind of flip the situation. Kind of like, oh, instead of how this person is feeling, how are you feeling about this situation? Really reflecting and getting a deeper answer. So yeah, those were my reflections of self-sabotage and how I am always like working on them. I don't think I'm like completely done working with any of these topics, but I hope that you're able to take what I've learned into your new year and help yourself like become like even a better person than last year. And I'll see you soon.